Ever had a toothache so bad you'd, try almost anything to make it stop?
Oh, tell me about it.
Well, that's what we're diving into today.
Okay.
A listener wrote in wanting to know about clove oil for tooth pain.
Interesting.
Is it legit or just, an old wives' tale?
Right, right.
We found a really interesting article that digs into the science behind it.
Okay.
So let's see if clove oil is really worth its salt or if we should just, stick to modern medicine.
Yeah, it's funny you mention old wives' tale because clove oil for toothaches actually pops up in traditional medicine systems,
Oh, really?
like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine.
Ah.
It's been used for centuries.
So not just like some random spice grandma recommends.
Right.
What is it about cloves that makes them good for pain relief?
So cloves contain this natural compound called eugenol, and eugenol has natural anesthetic properties.
Mm.
Like it's so effective that it's even used in some dental materials today.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
So it's got like legit pain-numbing action going on.
Mm-hmm.
But does the research back up what these traditional practices have been saying, for
Yeah.
years?
Yeah, there's definitely been some promising research. One study found eugenol to be even more effective than some other common pain relievers
Wow,
for pain, inflammation, and even wound healing.
that's impressive.
Right.
But the article also mentions that the FDA recently downgraded their stance on clove oil for toothaches, saying there isn't enough evidence to back it up.
Right.
What's that all about?
So that's right. It's important to understand that the FDA's statement isn't saying clove oil doesn't work. What they're saying is that more rigorous, large-scale studies are needed to meet their standards for, a solid recommendation.
So it's not necessarily a case of clove oil is bogus. It's more like we need more data to be sure.
Exactly. And that's where things get a bit tricky because absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence.
Right.
Just because we haven't definitively proven something in a lab setting doesn't mean it's not happening.
Right, that makes sense.
Right.
Seems like there's a lot of, anecdotal evidence and historical use,
Mm-hmm.
but modern science just hasn't fully caught up yet.
Exactly. But that lack of definitive scientific backing is why the FDA made their statement.
Okay, so let's say someone listening is intrigued and wants to try clove oil for a toothache.
Sure.
They reach into their spice cabinet, grab the clove oil. What should they do?
So the key here is caution. Never apply clove oil directly to the affected area.
Okay.
It needs to be diluted, especially for children, as it can be quite potent.
Mhm.
The article suggests a few drops in a teaspoon of a carrier oil, like almond or olive oil, applied with a cotton swab.
And just to reiterate, we're talking about temporary relief here, right?
Absolutely.
This isn't a replacement for a visit to the dentist if you're dealing with like a persistent toothache.
Absolutely. A toothache can be a symptom of a whole host of underlying issues.
Right.
Cavities, abscesses, infections, things clove oil won't fix.
Right, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm, right?
Exactly.
It might cover it up temporarily, but it's not going to solve the real problem.
Exactly. This is where listening to your body is crucial.
Yeah.
Clove oil or not, persistent pain is a sign that you need to see a professional.
That's really important to remember. The article does mention a few other things you can try for temporary relief as well.
It does. Like rinsing with warm salt water can be helpful, or applying a cold compress to the area.
Okay.
Over-the-counter pain relievers are always an option too, as long as you're following dosage guidelines.
So there are options, but the bottom line is, if the pain persists, get yourself to a dentist.
100%.
Now, getting back to clove oil for a moment,
Okay.
it's fascinating to consider that while it's traditionally been used for toothaches, the science behind it, specifically eugenol, suggests it could have much broader applications.
Yeah.
It seems like eugenol is more than just a one-trick pony,
It really is fascinating. It makes sense when you think about it.
How so?
Well, we've been talking about tooth pain, but pain is pain, right?
Yeah.
And inflammation is often a major player, whether it's, your tooth that's throbbing or you've got a stiff knee or...
That's true.
Yeah.
So you're saying the same properties that make eugenol good for toothaches could also be good for other types of pain as well.
Exactly. And there's research to support that.
Really?
Yeah. Studies have looked at using clove oil topically again, diluted for things like muscle pain and osteoarthritis,
Okay.
with some promising results. It seems the eugenol can actually, penetrate the skin and target those inflammatory pathways,
Interesting.
providing relief.
So it's like a more targeted approach to pain relief, going right to the source of the problem.
Precisely.
Okay.
But what's even more intriguing is the research emerging around eugenol's potential for something called systemic inflammation.
Systemic inflammation. That sounds kind of serious. What is that exactly?
It is serious. Systemic inflammation is when the inflammation is happening throughout your body, not just localized to one spot like a sore tooth or a pulled muscle.
Okay.
Think of conditions like heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, even certain types of cancer.
Wow.
They've all been linked to chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body.
Wow, those are some major health concerns.
Mhm.
So we're talking about the same eugenol found in clove oil potentially playing a role in addressing these systemic inflammation issues.
Yeah, it's still early days, and we need a lot more research to say for sure, but the early findings are certainly interesting.
Okay.
There are studies suggesting eugenol might have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects that could protect against certain types of cell damage.
So not only might it help with that throbbing toothache, but it could also be working on a deeper level to address the root causes of these serious conditions.
Exactly. It's like eugenol is a multitasker, fighting inflammation on multiple fronts.
Wow.
But it's important to remember this is still an emerging area of research, and there's a lot more to learn.
Yeah, that's what's so exciting though, right?
Yeah.
We start with a seemingly simple question about clove oil and toothaches, and it opens up this whole rabbit hole of possibilities.
It really does. It reminds us that there's so much we still don't know, and even the most common substances can hold hidden depths and untapped potential.
Right.
Speaking of which,
So we started with clove oil for toothaches, and now we're talking about systemic inflammation, and it's a lot.
it really is. And it's amazing how much one little caution can uncover.
It really shows how much more there is to learn.
Right. We've gone from traditional wisdom to modern science and even touched on the potential of eugenol for systemic inflammation.
Yeah, and it's really incredible to think that something you might find in your spice cabinet could have such, far-reaching implications.
Absolutely. It just goes to show there's always something new to discover, even in the most commonplace substances.
So for our listener who wrote in about clove oil for toothaches, what are the key takeaways?
Okay, first and foremost, while clove oil might provide temporary relief from a toothache, don't ditch your dentist just yet.
Right.
It's not a substitute for proper dental care.
Exactly. If you're dealing with persistent tooth pain, get yourself to a professional.
Right. Now, while the FDA wants to see more data on clove oil for toothaches specifically, the research behind eugenol, its active ingredient, is compelling.
Yeah.
It acts as a natural anesthetic and anti-inflammatory.
Right.
And researchers are excited about its potential for a whole host of issues related to pain and inflammation.
It's like clove oil is ready to graduate from the spice rack to the laboratory.
Precisely. And that brings us to something we like to leave our listeners with.
Yeah, okay.
A thought-provoking question to keep those mental gears turning.
Oh, I like these. What intriguing question came out of this deep dive?
Well, we've been talking about eugenol's potential for pain and inflammation, but one thing that struck me is that it's already used in dentistry.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and has been for quite a while.
Because those numbing and anti-inflammatory properties.
Exactly. Which leads to a fascinating question.
What's that?
If eugenol is already considered safe and effective enough to be used inside our mouths in dental procedures, what other applications might it have in the future? Could this lead to new and improved treatments for other oral health issues?
Interesting.
Or even inspire entirely new approaches to dental care? It's pretty fascinating to think about.
We started with clove oil and toothaches, and now we're considering the future of dentistry.
That's the beauty of knowledge and, scientific exploration.
Right.
It's a journey that never really ends. There's always more to discover, and it all starts with asking questions.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the possibilities.
Yes.
Until next time, keep those brains engaged and never be afraid to take a deep dive into the fascinating world around us.